So today we're going to be talking about the timeline. The timeline explains what happens from a moment a buyer makes an offer all the way through closing. It explains the steps that have to happen during inspections, appraisal, some of the very general things that happen with the lender, and the amount of time that it takes to get through each one of these steps. Watch it till the end. It'll give you a very clear idea of when you should be able to either give keys or receive keys based on whether you're a seller or a buyer. And it'll give you a very clear idea of what you can expect. I hope this is helpful, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. Thanks. Alrighty. So once we make an offer, it will be based on price, terms, closing date, closing cost, survey, all the different things that are in the contract that I go over in the contract video. We make an offer to the seller on a contract form, but it's not a contract until everybody agrees. We go back and forth, and then once we agree and we get initials and signatures and we date it, then it becomes an official contract. Okay? Once we have a contract, then earnest money is going to be payable to title, and then termination option fee, we call it the option fee, is paid to the seller. Okay? Now, earnest money can run anywhere between $500 and $5,000. Okay? It's negotiable. Option fee can be anywhere from $50 to $200 or even more if you want. Now, this money will be a credit at closing, okay, if you do close. If you cancel within a reason of the contract, then you get that money back. This money is also a credit, but only if you close, okay? If you cancel during that termination period, then you don't get that money back. What is the period? It's whatever we wrote in the contract, okay? So let's assume it's 7 days, okay? And you paid the seller $100 for it, right? So let's say this is January 1, the contract date. Then January 2 is the first date of that option period, okay? Day 1 of option. Now you have up until the 8th at 5 p.m. in the time zone of where the house is to cancel. The buyer has the unrestricted right to cancel during that time. If they paid for the option, they get the right. These two amounts, whatever they are, will be wired to the title company. You have to make sure that we get that option fee in and the title earnest money in. Otherwise, if you don't have an option fee, you don't have an option, okay? So during this time, you get inspections, okay? And we negotiate repairs, okay? Now, do you have to get an inspection? No, but should you? Absolutely. You want to know what's going on with the house. Now, at the same time that this is going on, you're going to be talking to the lender, okay, your mortgage company. You're going to do the formal application, which is very long, and you will be submitting a bunch of more forms that they will be asking for. Now, you say, why do they have to know so much? Well, it's because you're borrowing a big amount of money. And with all the mortgage laws in place after the bust in 2008, they require so much more, okay? So the lender will put everything together and send it to the processor, okay? They're the guy that does all the legwork. They contact the IRS to get copies of your returns. They contact Social Security to get, to confirm your number. They'll be asking you for home insurance. They'll be getting title work, okay? And all the meantime, they'll be asking for information from you, bank statements, if there's a divorce decree, if there's anything showing up on the credit, something to clarify, what you owe or anything that's not properly documented or showing up there, okay? So let's go back. We're getting inspections. We come to an agreement. Cool. We're ready to move forward at this point, right? So at this point, the lender orders the appraisal, okay? Now, normally the appraiser has 2 weeks or 10 business days, but right now, things can be crazy and it could take a little while for the appraiser to actually get assigned and get out there, right? So let's say we have like 2 weeks here. Okay, now we're 7 days in. By the time we order this, by the time it comes in, it'll be at the 3-week mark, more or less, right? So we negotiate repairs. You've paid the earnest money to the title, the option to the title, that goes to the seller. And you've also gotten your inspection done. And your inspection can run, depending on the size of the house, anywhere from $240 and up, let's say $350. Now, that's the home. This is not the same as the appraisal. The home inspection checks for every single little thing that's wrong with the house. The appraiser shows up and inspects for value, okay? So, there's also pool. That's, anywhere from 100 to 150. And then there's termite if you require a termite, okay? And that's about $80 or $90, okay? Now, if it's a VA loan, the buyer is not allowed to pay for this. It gets billed to the seller, all right? But in the event you don't close, then the buyer may have to pay for this if they don't purchase the house, right? So, inspection, the monies, this is not refundable, okay? Because it is not required and it's for the benefit of the buyer. So what happens at this point, we get a report. I will give you my suggestions on what to ask for. We present it to the seller, and there's a bunch of different ways to negotiate repairs. You can negotiate repairs with having the seller do them. You can have a price reduction. You can have ask them to give you help with closing costs or more closing costs. There's a bunch of different ways we can handle that, right? So appraisal goes out, and in the meantime, the lender is working on getting this loan package together. Once that loan package is together, then they submit it to the underwriter, okay? The underwriter is the Grand Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, and he's the one that gives the final approval, okay? Once the final approval is in, then it gets sent to the closing department within the mortgage company, okay? The closing department will then send the buyer at least 3 days before closing the final numbers that they will need to come in with. And this is called the CD, the closing disclosure. Why 3 days? Because then there are certain numbers that I cannot really vary a whole lot from the original estimate that they gave you here, okay? There are certain classifications or certain percentages that they can vary or not vary depending on what the fee is, right? So they get this, and then the closing department will have the documents written up to help transfer title. Okay, then it gets sent to title. The title company will work up the numbers and get the okay from the lender that those numbers look right. They get instructions on how much to charge, what the fees are, where they're supposed to be, that sort of thing. They go back and forth, title and the lender, to make sure that everything looks good. Once everything looks good, then we can schedule for closing, okay? Now, during this time, the seller has to have utilities on, and the buyer has a right to do a walkthrough right before closing, right? So let's say we get here and the appraisal is in. Now, if the appraisal comes in short, then we can renegotiate or terminate if it's an FHA or VA loan, unless we stipulate otherwise. If it's a conventional, then we have to figure out what's going to happen, because conventional does not give the buyer that protection. There is an additional addendum, and I will suggest it if I feel like it might not meet value, and that is to make sure that if it does not appraise, we can renegotiate. So let's say we renegotiate. What can be renegotiated? The price, obviously, closing costs if the seller's already promised to do that, and any other concessions they may have given. So we can renegotiate all these things, again, because the seller is not required to lower the price. Okay, so let's say the appraiser requires certain repairs. Okay, those are called lender required repairs. If we did not already negotiate these during this option period, then we get to negotiate these now. Again, seller's not required, buyer's not required is completely negotiable. So let me go back here. The appraisal is also paid for by the buyer, okay, back here. And this will also be a credit at closing, okay? Now, you don't close, the appraisal gets done, the buyer has to pay for it, right? So we have all these things happening here, all these little dominoes that are falling. The buyer gets their notification 3 days before closing of what they need. When title company gets the docs, then we can schedule, okay? Not before, because lots of things can happen, right? So the buyer will show up to closing, the seller will show up to closing, and then they will sign. If they're in different places, they will need to meet with a notary to sign original documents and send them back to title. Now, this is very, very important. You do not get keys when you sign, because seller has to sign, buyer has to sign, and original documents have to be at title. Then, once they do that, they send it to the lender to confirm that everything is okay, signed everywhere needed, no missing initials or anything like that. Then at that point, they will send the wire to the title company. Now, banks have cutoff times for wires. If it's too late in the day, it might not make the wire for that day. It'll be the next business day. Remember, banks don't wire money on the weekends. So if one or both parties are out of town, it's always better to make sure that we close like on a Thursday. If you want keys on a Friday, because that'll ensure that the documents make it back in time and we can get you keys to the house. It is not a final deal until all these things happen right here. Don't plan for a moving van the day of closing. I would suggest that you give yourself a few days buffer. Consult with me. I will break down the timeline for you more specifically. At closing, buyer will pay any documents they need. Seller will pay sign any documents they need. And title will make sure that everybody gets the appropriate credits. And title will also make sure that any liens that were on the property because of the seller get removed. So lots going on, but I think it's important to understand what's going to happen during the process so that you can be fully prepared. I hope this helps. A little reminder that my business is based on referrals. Without wonderful people such as yourself, I could not keep my business running. So if you happen to know of anybody, friend, family, coworker, neighbor that is interested in buying, selling, or investing in real estate, I would love to give them the best level of personal care. Thanks so much. Feel free to reach out, text, email, or call me. Thanks. Bye-bye.